Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Fantasy Fools podcast. And we are back after a short break, which turned into a long break. But we're here, and we're ready to jump into some NFL and fantasy-related news.
Short break turned to 3 weeks or so. I mean, we were really kind of dragging our feet on this one. But hey,
We slacked.
it's good to be back on this, and good to be back to get to our fans, right?
Our fan. No, we got a lot to talk about today.
We can't get to it all, but it's okay.
Yeah, we'll try. We are joined by our hosts, Michael, Sean, Jordan, Patrick, and I am Tyler Scott. And today we're going to start out by talking about some relevant news and things just going on in the NFL. Mike, kick us off.
We got a whole bunch of stuff that was going on, and we'll try to keep it. We'll try to keep it on the down low because we really don't have a whole. We have to basically go through and summarize a lot of this. We missed a lot of the last 3 weeks. We had basically free agency startup. We have a lot of trades that are getting ready for the draft. But in summation, let's go with this. Russell Wilson is out. He's gone. He was cut, and he was basically picked up by the Steelers. We'll talk more about him later. Mitch Trubisky went to the Bills. Franchise tags have been released. We do not exactly have a whole list of all of them, but you can pull them up via Google.
Via the Google?
Via the Google.
You were going to say our website, weren't you?
I was. I haven't made the website yet. It's coming. It's coming, but I have not made the website yet, so I cannot do that.
That doesn't exist?
Yeah. Like I said, it's coming. It's coming. Big names not tagged. I was shocked to say Saquon Barkley not tagged. So you know what?
Sorry,
he ended up hitting the market, and we will talk about
Xavier McKinney, who's now a freaking Packer. Okay.
Well,
okay.
Yep. You can talk about that later. You can rant. You can rant later. Jason Kelce officially retired. Breaking news today, as of recording, Aaron Donald also retired.
Wow.
Shocking news, but guess what? It happened. And Chris Jones, he has not retired. He signed his big lucrative deal with Kansas City. 5 years, $95 million deal.
Wow.
Man, that Super Bowl really helped him, didn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Well, I think the biggest one that I'm actually surprised about was probably the Saquon letting him go. I don't know about you guys, but that one, what are the Giants going to do? And Jordan, I'm sorry we have to dwell on this, but as a Giants fan, I need to know why.
So
I just gotta
saw
say this.
Coming.
Can I just say this real quick? I think I give the Giants as an organization a ton of respect for not franchising tagging him. He obviously, everybody knows he was a generational talent. He's so great, and he was kind of stuck at the Giants. And you know what? I give him a lot of credit for just letting him go and actually be competitive for a change.
Yeah, so I think, I saw it coming. The writing was on the wall because the thing was that he wanted 3 years. He wanted more guaranteed money. And the Giants just weren't in a position that it made sense for them to spend that guaranteed money on that position. So I understood. I personally, I wanted to let Saquon go for him because I like him. I wanted to see him go somewhere where he can actually win on the second half of his career. I did not think it would be the fucking Eagles. I thought it was going to be the Chargers or the Ravens. Would have totally rooted for him, but not rooting for him at all.
Yeah, that was a rough landing spot for all Giants fans. But I gotta say,
I was pissed. When I read that news, I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
You are definitely not the only one. You are not the only one who was pissed. But you know what? I think he's gonna have a hell of a career there, and it's just unfortunate, I guess, that it's 1 year too late after he can play with Kelce. But oh well.
Yeah, but moving on, we're going to do a segment where we're going to go through each position, a little bit about free agency, just touch up. So I'm going to go over the quarterbacks. First off, we got Kenny Pickett, who was traded to the Eagles. Then Kirk Cousins signed with the Falcons.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, he's signed with the Steelers. Then Sam Howell traded to the Seahawks. Drew Lock signed with the Giants. There's all sorts of rumors he might be the starter. Mariota to the Commanders, no longer an Eagle. Baker just re-signed with the Bucks. Jacoby Brissett back to the Patriots. Joe Flacco signing up to be the backup for the Colts. because Gardner Minshew went to the Raiders, and Sam Darnold will be the veteran QB for the Vikings. What I find most interesting about all of this is Kirk Cousins.
Thank you for
I
that
think-
fabulous summary, Jordan.
Thank you. I think, Tyler, what do you think? How do you picture this affects? We know what Kirk Cousins is capable of in QB fantasy value. What about the rest of the Falcons cast?
I don't know. All right, so here's my issue. Kirk Cousins is not a young grasshopper anymore. The Falcons don't, to my understanding, don't have the best offensive line. And Cousins is just coming off a serious injury. I think this might be good for Bijan because Kirk Cousins is going to have to dump that ball fast and often. I still don't think the wide receivers are going to see too much of that benefit.
So Falcons actually do have a decent offensive line. You know, that's the one thing. They're ranked 7th according to Pro Fantasy Football.
Okay.
But you know, I think you're right. Just we'll see if this actually lets the Falcons receive it. Like, are we going to see Drake London finally bloom and finally pop?
Yes.
Probably not.
I
Mike?
believe so. Drake London has too much talent, and he was honestly. So the one thing that Atlanta has always needed, right? They needed someone who can actually dish the ball accurately, right? And they have not had that. They actually have, statistically, a pretty good offensive line. I think they're a top 10 offensive line. They actually have a ton of talent with. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just totally renege on everything I just said. Just cut it out. Cut.
I think you're wrong.
Just walk
they
out.
have a pretty good offensive line. They have
As always, you're
immense
a fool, Tyler.
talent. They have immense talent as far as the weapons and skill positions go. And now they have a quarterback who can actually dish it out. And their defense actually isn't even that bad. They're actually a good team. Honestly, you want to know what it reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of your boy Tom Brady going to a team that was ready to go, and all they needed was a quarterback, and he ended up going to the Bucs and won a Super Bowl. Do I think Atlanta will win a Super Bowl? I do not think they are as ready as the Bucs were, but I think they have a ton of skill, and now they have a quarterback. They will be very competitive next year.
I agree,
We'll see.
Mike. I think in terms of fantasy value, or in terms of NFL, I think you're right. This reminds me of Tom Brady going to the Bucs. In terms of fantasy value, I think this just helps Bijan keep him as a top 10 option. I think Drake London, we could see him really solidify in the top 15.
All right.
I agree. I think, Tyler, you're wrong. But, I mean, hey, guess what? We'll see.
All right.
Time will tell.
Mike,
But you
take
know
us
what?
to the wide receivers.
I will. I'll go through the wide receivers. Thank you, Jordan. So just some changes on the wide receivers that I think are notable.
What
So right off
kind
the bat,
of segue? Oh, thank you, Jordan. You're welcome, Michael.
So
Who are you?
I didn't.
Sorry,
say that.
listener. Our age and our having not done this in a while is really affecting our.
it really has. It really
transitions.
Why,
has.
when you do an impression of me, do you make a goofy voice? Like, not goofy silly, like goofy Disney. Like,
I don't
"Why?
know.
Well, you're welcome, Michael.
I'm Jordan.
Oh, you're welcome, Michael.
It's like
Boy
literally
with wide
goofy.
receivers.
But you know what? Now that we're going to go through wide receivers,
Tyler.
you guys are not going to interrupt me again. So let's see. Right off the bat, Deontay Johnson traded to the Panthers. We got Gabe Davis. I'm sorry. Did I just say Gabe Davis? No, I'm talking Bills number 15. 13? What was his number again? 13. Exactly. Doesn't matter.
Your
That
favorite
guy
player,
is now
Mike.
a Jag. That guy is now a Jag. Keenan
Sucks.
Allen. Huge news. Traded to the Bears. That one is going to come back and really help them out. Hunter Renfrow has been released from the Raiders. You have Marquise Brown. Basically, he's going to be a Chief. He's going to be a Chief now, so ended up getting freed up from the Cardinals. You have Mike Evans returning to the Bucs, Darnell Mooney going to the Falcons, just to add to that core of skilled players. You have Curtis Samuel going to the Bills, Calvin Ridley joining the Titans on a nice deal. You have Jerry Jeudy going to the Browns. That one, I don't know about you guys, that one surprised me. And then another one of note, Rondale Moore going to
Resign.
He left the Cardinals, and
He did?
Rondale Moore is no longer a Cardinal. He is now a Falcon.
Oh.
So I mean, you have some pretty notable names. Maybe again, guys like Rondell Moore, they were high-end picks. They were first-round picks who maybe just didn't get their chance and they didn't shine the way their former team wanted them to. Maybe Rondell's got a better chance, but I want to circle back to Calvin Ridley. I think Calvin Ridley is going to be a really interesting one. You're talking about a guy who is 29 years old, but he's just coming off of his rookie deal. Now, imagine
Rookie?
rookie deal. He's just come off his rookie deal because he was, I believe, a slightly older player when he was drafted anyway, showed a tremendous amount of talent, but I think his first year he got hurt. Second year he broke out. Third and fourth year he missed because of injuries and also a suspension for gambling in the NFL. So yeah, he basically just came back and took the league by storm, but he came back as like a 24-year-old. So it was a tough road for Calvin Ridley. He's finally coming back off a deal, but he put together 1,000-yard season last season. And I think he might be able to repeat this with a new team that's really looking to actually go through and find some offense now. They're no longer going to be, I think, a running team. They lost their coach. Vrabel's not there anymore. They're going to end up going through and changing their offense, and they don't have King Henry anymore. What do you guys think?
Yeah, but who's their quarterback?
Will Levis.
Who loves chucking the ball.
He
Not
does
accurately, but he loves chucking the ball.
And I think, what's interesting here is for me, Calvin Ridley might be a sleeper next year. Everyone's going to focus on DeAndre Hopkins, who's a little older. And I think by the end of the season, Calvin Ridley is going to be number one.
Yeah, but look at the season that DeAndre Hopkins had with Will Levis. Nothing really happened. Yeah, maybe one game with 3 touchdowns, and that was, I think he had 4 on the season. I just don't trust Will Levis to provide. I think Calvin really had a better shot with the Jags being a fantasy relevant player than with the Titans.
He did, and there's no doubt about it. I think that Calvin Ridley took the bag here. Again, he's just coming off his rookie deal. He never got paid. He wanted money, and he knew he can get it from some team that probably was not. Tennessee's not looking to win anything next year. They are definitely taking a step down, and they're in rebuild mode, right? But he has the opportunity to be that number one receiver with a quarterback who's looking to prove himself as well. And yes, he did have a mostly lackluster season, but he had a season where he had at least the one game where he had 4 touchdowns and over 300 yards. He showed a flash. Now, maybe they can improve in his second year.
We'll see.
I don't know. Also, talking about running backs, surprise trade here. Pollard gets moved to the Titans. Saquon, we talked about him moving to the Eagles. Devin Singletary going to be that breakout giant running back that they really need and to replace Saquon. Aaron Rodgers to the Vikings. Grandpa can become a Viking now. Austin Eckler to the Commanders. Derrick Henry to the Ravens. I think he's going to be the Joker from now on. Joe Mixon to the Texans. Josh Jacobs to the Packers. DeAndre Swift, replaced by Saquon, is moving to the Bears. My poor fantasy team. Zach Moss to the Bengals. Antonio Gibson to the Patriots. And Gus Edwards to the Chargers. I think, there's a lot of movement in running backs, and I am surprised by a lot of these. But really, where I want to focus on is the fantasy relevance of Zach Moss. Now that Joe Mixon's out and Zach Moss is in, we saw sparks from, Chris Rodriguez at the end of the season. I think Zach is going to be their primary back, but do you think Zach is going to have the same season he had last year? And do you think he's going to be, again, a fantasy relevant player?
I do. I think he's I think he's going to be a higher tier RB2.
I agree. I think he can be an RB2, and I think he will be drafted like so. I am afraid because there's just not a big enough sample size. Obviously, I mean, this is a guy who's been basically the number 2 running back behind Josh Jacobs forever, and he finally had his opportunity when Jacobs wasn't there in the beginning of the season. He did. He looked really good while he was there. But he ended up basically just only having 5 or 6 games really to play. So I think it's going to be really nerve-wracking.
You
And
mean
you're
Jonathan
right, they
Taylor?
do already have. I'm sorry, Jonathan Taylor. I said Josh Jacobs.
I was
didn't
I was just
Yes.
like, what? Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yes, behind
Continue.
Jonathan Taylor. You're right. Anyway, moving on, and I do think it's going to be one of those risky picks in the second, third round where you're going to basically take him and hope for the best.
I agree. I think I'm picking him certainly not as an RB1. If you look at what Joe Mixon did last year, he was pretty good in fantasy. I don't expect the same thing just because he's on that team. They're going to throw the ball a lot more with Joe Burrow back. So Zach Moss, I think, is going to be a solid RB2 with potential upside. Of RBs, just Chargers. Really? Gus Edwards? What is happening with the Chargers offense? Anyway.
I think they're about to. I think they're going to take Blake Corum.
Well, I think just like they got rid of their wide receivers, they got rid of Keenan Allen.
I was muted.
Mike,
Whoops.
You certainly were muted.
I kept trying to jump in.
To signal to you. We're so bad at this. We are never taking 3 weeks off.
This is our worst one so far.
I was going to say, I was so mad because Mike interrupted me.
We've been saying all sorts of
Jordan
shit.
interrupted me. Mike interrupted me. I thought I was
trying
talking.
to signal to you.
Tyler, when you tried saying JT, I saw you moving and I saw you saying something. I'm like, what? I didn't hear you.
I thought you were purposely mouthing it.
Yeah,
really
same.
did. I didn't realize you were on mute. It took me a solid 3 minutes.
Oh, that's all right. Back to my point,
Mike. I think that was our best 3 minutes yet. Like
that was
on
our best 3 minutes so far on the podcast, for sure.
Of the entire, all 14 episodes when Tyler was on mute.
It was actually calm.
My
it was
favorite
cool.
part.
It was collected.
Yeah.
All right.
Load so.
Can I talk about Zach Moss for 2 seconds?
You have been. We just have been happy and not hearing you.
All right. My thought is,
why hasn't ESPN hired us yet?
All right, let's move on. We're talking the AFC.
No, okay. I did that one up because I had to. I couldn't resist. I'll shut up now. I'll mute myself.
I'm gonna mute you. I can do that. Y'all motherfuckers. All right. So my point is I think Zach Moss in this year's draft is going to be the equivalent of Cam Akers in last year's draft, where you're not sure they're a high value draft capital, but you're really taking a gamble on a really good season, almost a breakout season versus a dud. And that's how I view the Zach Moss draft pick this year.
Yeah, I can see that.
I agree.
Gosh, took a long time to get that out.
I can see that.
I'm so glad you had some time to think about what you wanted to say.
You know what? You're right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is our fantasy and NFL news up to date, and we're going to keep that going to keep you guys informed on movement in the NFL. Now we're jumping in over the next couple of weeks. We're going to talk about each division, and talk about teams. Mention their big names leaving, possible 2024 targets, and people to avoid. There's always those names that we're always questioning on whether or not we want to draft them, and we're going to give our opinions on where we should go with that. But we're going to start it off with the New York Jets, and just to kick this segment off, I'm going to just say, hey, big name staying is got to be Aaron Rodgers. That's big news, but it's ironic because it's also news that I would say as a fantasy manager, you probably don't want to pick him high. I would almost say you want to avoid him, especially coming off that injury. And he's a New York Jet. So let's be honest here.
I'm with you 100%. I think Aaron Rodgers is huge news for the Jets as an organization. I think it could be good news. I also think it could be really bad. He did not have the greatest season in his last season with Green Bay, and he is just coming off of that injury. I think he could be a real liability for the Jets.
I think if anyone's picking him for fantasy reasons, you're picking him because it's fun. You're a fan. But when it comes down to true fantasy value, he's going to be top of the backup list in my book.
Yeah, and I think the real two big names you're going for, and you're probably going to spend some draft capital on. But again, I'd say this first person, Garrett Wilson. I, I I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little cautious making him a first or second round pick just
Me
because of what
too.
happened last season, and knowing that Aaron Rodgers is not a young spry guy anymore either. So I think he's definitely someone you want to pick, but I think when it comes down to it, like, would you pick Garrett Wilson, excuse me, or someone like Keenan Allen? Who would you pick between the two of them?
Garrett
Keenan Allen.
Wilson.
Oh. Yep. See? I don't know.
I think Keenan Allen he proved it a lot last year, and I guess I'm also taking a lot of last year into it because he just has been that consistent. I mean, you're talking 10 years straight of 1,000-yard seasons.
Yep.
He is the guy.
I would say I would probably pick Garrett Wilson too. I think he
Okay.
I think I would rather the younger guy than the older man. Also, team I'm going to target a player I'm going to target is running back Brees Hall. Ended up, what was he, top? I actually think we
Was it
have it
top
somewhere in
4?
here. He was like top 4. Actually, he was the 4th on the end of the season. We talked about that a couple episodes ago, and I think he's still going to be a force to be reckoned with.
For me, I completely agree with you, Tyler. The far and away Brees Hall's fantasy value, I think I'm picking, like, he's the number one fantasy guy for the Jets this coming season. Garrett Wilson, great talent. Don't get me wrong. However, you mentioned that Aaron Rodgers is not as young as he was. You're talking about a guy who at the first half of his career was known to throw it on the run and how good he was at throwing on the run. He still can. He's not going to scramble as much. He's not going to QB sneak and run it. He's going to play. He's going to use Brees Hall, who is a fantastic running back. So I'm excited to see Brees Hall's fantasy value next year.
Yeah, me too. Moving on to the New England Patriots. Jordan, what do we got there?
So this one's interesting. For the first time in over 20 years, we're going to have a new head coach for the Patriots. It's going to be really interesting how their draft is going to affect the big name staying. But, you've got Ramondre Stevenson staying. In terms of who's going to be joining him in the backfield now that Zeke is cut, it's going to be Antonio Gibson. So seems like they're going to continue the Patriots' tradition of running back by committee. I'm not sure who I would pick out of those two to be who's going to be the ground and pound guy, who's going to be the end zone guy. Then for wide receivers, you've got a few people staying. Douglas is staying, Juju staying. But to be honest, I think Patriots are going to be one of those teams for me that I'm not looking really at any of their guys for fantasy value. Maybe Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson in the RB2, RB3 mix, but that's it.
Yeah, I would say, Jordan, would you consider drafting Antonio Gibson? Do you think that trade is going to have an effect on that backfield? Do you think he's going to be fantasy relevant?
I think it's going to be tough because if they continue to coach like Belichick did, one of them might be like the end zone guy. If he's going to be getting those end zone touches, yeah, he's got good fantasy value. But Antonio Gibson in Washington, he never showed me that he has that like breakaway ability to all of a sudden just break out and get a 68-yard run.
They're the interesting here though is they're both pass catching backs. Ramondre is notorious for being a pass catching running back, and so is Antonio Gibson. And if you remember from this past season, they used Antonio Gibson, used him as a wide receiver more than a handful of times.
No, you got a good point there, Ty. I think that is really the most interesting part about this trade. I don't really, or about them acquiring him. I just think I think they both being pass catching backs, that might open up a little bit more of the backfield, and they might have honestly 2 RBs out there at the same time. I could honestly see it, but I think overall Ramondre is gonna be your guy, and Antonio Gibson's more your insurance.
Do you
Yeah.
think they're relying on Jacoby Brissett too much, or do you think they have way too much faith in a rookie quarterback? We talked about rookie quarterbacks a lot. Do you think they're putting too much faith in that draft, or do you think they think Jacoby's going to be a huge asset for him?
I think Jacoby is going to be great insurance. That's it. I don't think. I mean, he
think
might
they're drafting
not
Jake
even start a game.
I think they're drafting Drake May, and I think they're going to move on. I
Yeah.
think that's going to end up happening. I think they're going to end up getting Drake May, and he's going to be their guy to go forward. And Jacoby Brissett is more or less that guy who was the veteran leadership that they didn't have because they're going to take a quarterback, right? And right now, with Bailey Zappi as their senior quarterback, they didn't have anybody else
'Cause
to
Mac
groom
Jones is
him
a
in the NFL.
Freaking Jaguar.
Yup. So that doesn't help. So they had no veteran leadership. They needed somebody to start the season without throwing their hopefully franchise guy into the fire.
All right, Mike, take it away with the Bills.
So I think the Bills at least have something to offer unlike the other teams. So we're talking about the Bills having the big names that are fantasy assets that are staying, right? You got Stephon Diggs, James Cook, Josh Allen, Dalton Kincaid. You can throw Dawson Knox in there. They have some of your league winners, right? Josh Allen has literally been the number 1 or number 2 guy for most of the last 5-6 years at the QB position. He's been literally the guy who won you championships. Now he's somebody who I would definitely say I'm looking to keep on next year's roster, and I might even be willing to draft him at Pat Mahomes status next year, like first, second round. Like he might actually be worth that.
Yeah.
But a guy who I think everybody drafted way too high last year, everyone who did get him would agree, and I'm definitely willing to let go, is Stephon Diggs this next year. Stephon Diggs has really taken a major downturn. He started off the season super hot, basically was a top 10. I think he was even a top 5 guy, putting up multiple games of over 100 yards, even a couple of touchdowns. He had one game that was 36 points against Miami in week 4. And then all of a sudden, after week 10, he just seemed to roll over. And I think that might be more to come because when he rolled over and really started letting you down, that was when James Cook became the head part of the offense. It just became a running show.
I will say, could Stephon Diggs be a sneaky late round pick?
Without a doubt. But how low do you think he's going to fall?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's obviously draft dependent, but if he falls to, say, the 6th, 7th round, are you gonna do you think he's worth that capital? Do you think that's a sneaky pick? Do you think people are gonna let him go that far? I'm a believer.
I don't think people let him go that far.
See, I think they're gonna let him go.
I'm with Jordan.
I think he gets snagged by the 5th, and I think he's more of a 6th.
I think everyone's gonna look again, pending what this year's draft class is going to look like, right? Because there's a ton of wide receivers in this year's draft class. But right now, he's going to be the wide receiver 1 on a high-powered offense. And even though he may not be that guy who everybody's used to being, he's still going to have the name recognition, and he's going to be gone by the 3rd or 4th round. He will be. That's what I think. If he's in the 6th, Tyler, hands down, I'll grab him. Absolutely, he's worth that.
I would take him as well. I would do it as well. I would take him as my wide receiver 3. I think I would only take him as my wide receiver 2 if I had my tight end locked in and my top 2 running backs locked in. But in terms of that offense, I also think Dalton Kincaid is going to step up more next year and command more targets. Stephon Diggs got a lot of targets this year and didn't make a ton happen with it the second half of the season. And next year, he's going to be a year older. They're going to see that, okay, something we didn't work last year, so we need to do something different. So I think Dalton Kincaid, maybe a little bit of Dawson Knox, but really Kincaid's going to step up next year. He's probably my most interesting pick here.
My thought there, though, and Mike, you and I talk about this a lot, is there's a lot of tight ends who I think if you're not getting the first, Lions tight end, what's his name?
Sam Laporta.
If you're not getting a Travis
Mark
Kelce,
Andrews.
if TJ Hawkinson, if you're not getting them, after that, I feel like it drops enough where I don't really care. But again, I think you're right. If Kincaid falls in your draft at a good round, I would take him.
Yeah, I think he may be the next one to join that group, to be honest.
Yeah.
He has the potential. I mean, like, I
George
just
Kittle is
personally,
in there.
I just think, to your credit, like you said, Tyler, we've talked about this on the podcast so many times. I just think the tight ends next year are just, it's no longer that group of 2 or 3 at the top, and then there's a huge
Right.
drop. I think everyone's just kind of smushed. I think like there's
That's what I
now
meant. I'm sorry.
there,
Yes.
yeah, there's now so many more people who are good. It's no longer 3 guys who can put up points and then the other guys are just nothing. So I just think Dalton Kincaid could be up there, and I think he might still finish at the tight end 8-9. That's fine. But I mean, I think 8-9 is going to be pretty much in the realm of where 3 used to be 3 years ago.
Right. And like to your point, it doesn't matter if you're going with Njoku or Kincaid.
Like
You
you
both
didn't
want
even say
them.
Trey McBride.
Right.
Trey McBride
Exactly.
has a ton of talent.
That's yep, exactly. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins, the last team in the AFC East. Not a lot of big news coming out of Miami.
Yeah, not a lot.
The biggest thing is Mike Gesicki has been moved to the Bengals. Most of your names are still staying, and I think Miami Dolphins, you're still probably going to target the guys you thought you would. Tyreek Hill, you're going to target him. You know, even though he's getting older, he's still a monster. Devon Achane, I think he's going to be a high round pick this year. I don't know. Mostert, I haven't heard any news on, so I think he's still in there. I don't believe in Mostert like Mike does, but
I do
I
believe in
agree. I
Achane.
think Mostert's going to be good because I think he will stay. Now, you're right. We haven't really heard any news anything. And we do. The only news we know is 2 months ago, he pretty much doesn't need off-season surgery. So that's great. I mean, we do know he was hurting a little bit in the final games and in the playoffs. He tweaked his knee a little bit, but you know what? He's doing okay. He didn't seem like it was anything too rough, and I think he's going to be back because he fits Mike McDaniel's offense so well.
We'll see. Achane's the guy that I'm looking at in Miami.
yeah, from a running back perspective, I'm with you, and I think they're looking to trade away Jalen Waddle, who we also talked about a few episodes ago. Not a fan myself. Maybe I'd be a fan if he went somewhere else.
Jalen Waddle's a guy with a ton of talent, but you're right. He's kind of that number 2 in the offense, and I mean, I just don't know if they can take 2 alphas.
Yeah. So that about wraps it up for our AFC East segment. Next week we have, I don't know, Mike, where are we at next week? We're at the AFC North actually. We'll be talking about the AFC North and the teams and their fantasy relevance, any news and updates in the NFL. With that being said, though, we are going to give you a mock draft of this year's rookie class in the NFL. We're going to start each week with a few of the draft picks. Starting off with this week's episode, we're going to cover pick 32 through 26. That is the Chiefs, Niners, Ravens, Lions, Bills, Cardinals, and Bucks in that order, starting with from last to first. And Mike's going to kick us off with his draft for the Chiefs.
All
Where'd mine
right,
go?
so let's give it a start here. So I actually have a few wide receivers to start us off at this draft. So picks 32, I have Xavier Worthy. This guy is a little small. He's a little smaller, but you know what? He's fast as hell. So I think that he kind of fits that Tyreek Hill mold that they basically started off with Pat Mahomes back in the day. I think they go with him. Aiden Mitchell is who I have the 49ers grabbing. I think Deebo Samuel is getting a little older. I think they do have Brandon Ayuk, but I just think they might want to shore up a little bit of that wide receiver depth because I think after those guys, it's not really that deep. You end up going to Graham Barton. He's an offensive tackle out of Duke for the Ravens. They just basically got King Henry. They have a good offensive line. I think they end up really trying to keep that strong. I think they just invested a lot of time and money, a lot of money into Lamar Jackson as well. Their run game has obviously been a little bit lackluster in the past few years due to injuries. They're going to try and keep that strong to keep their guys healthy, keep King Henry healthy, and get them going forward. Darius Robinson, a defensive end out of Missouri, is who I have the Lions getting. I think they had a star-studded offense already last year. May as well just help a little bit with the defense. Zerjon Newton is who I have the Bills taking, and I don't really have many notes on him, so I'm just going to move on from there.
Unprepared.
Yeah, just like you having your entire list go away. But Tyler Guyton, the offensive line out of Oklahoma University.
The audience can't see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, and they didn't have to necessarily know
Hey,
that
Mike,
either.
are you going to tell our one fan what time we started and if we were late? Yeah, we were 3 weeks late.
We were 3 weeks late.
Yeah,
Moving
sorry we're
on,
late, guys.
We have Tyler Guyton, offensive line out of Oklahoma. Cardinals are going to snab him. And the Bucs, to finish us out at pick 26, are going to take defensive tackle Brandon Fisk.
All right.
Nice. I don't think any of ours are even close to the same.
Kingpin. That's a cool last name.
Yep.
Kingpin from Marvel, Wilson Fisk.
Yep.
We got it.
All right.
Moving on to my mock draft, I've got the Chiefs picking Damian Robinson, who's an edge rusher. I thought they really just they needed to shore up their defense a little more. They had a great defense last season, so I figure that is the case this season. 49ers defensive tackle, continue to build up that defensive line for the defense. Ravens, Michael Penix Jr., quarterback. All right, so I'm going to explain this one. I think the Ravens are going to go for a quarterback. And here's my thought. I don't like Lamar. I think they need a change. I think Lamar is not going to be the guy they want.
He just won his second MVP.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Are you?
I'm saying I think they need a new QB. They need to move on.
Listen, you might be right, and they might actually be looking for a replacement because they might shop him while his value is super high and he's not injured. But, like, to say he's not good, what are you talking about?
He just won his second MVP.
I didn't say he's not good. I just said I don't like
actually,
him.
rewind the tape. Rewind the tape.
You're not going to use your first-round pick to replace Lamar Jackson.
Well, they should.
This is why you're
Move
not
on.
GM.
I think they should.
Go to the Lions.
Graham Barton, offensive line with the Lions, continue to give offensive linemen to continue to give Jared Goff that protection. Bills, Adonai Mitchell, who's a wide receiver, and I really believe in this one, or I believe the Bills are going to go for a wide receiver because with Stephon Diggs aging out, they don't have a guy. I don't know much about the rookies, but he's a wide receiver, and I guess he's good. Patrick Paul, offensive tackle for the Cardinals, and Keon Coleman, wide receiver for the Bucs. I think just to complement Mike Evans and with an older Chris Godwin, I think they could shop around for another wide receiver option.
Keon Coleman is actually a really interesting pick actually here. He was a guy who was really initially going into this year thought of as a very high-end prospect, and he's actually been falling down the draft boards a little bit. There were talks about him being potentially top 10, top 15 talent originally, but he's had some falling down the draft board. So actually to see that he's going down this far, and honestly, I think it would be a great replacement for Mike Evans. So we'll see.
Yeah,
that'll be interesting.
Man, okay, so my draft board, not too confident in it, but I do think that the Chiefs will go with a wide receiver. I have Adonai Mitchell available at this point. I think 49ers decide to shore up their offensive line. They grab a tackle with Tyler Guyton. I don't know how to pronounce it. Guyton?
I think it's Guyton. Doesn't matter.
Guyton. Now, Ravens, I'm pretty
Tons
confident in this pick.
Whoa.
I'm pretty confident in my pick for the Ravens. With Patrick Queen, their like main linebacker, signing with the Steelers in free agency, they got to replace a guy who has that big of a presence. I think they take the top linebacker in the draft, Peyton Wilson, out of my alma mater, NC State. Then after that, I have the Lions shoring up their offense. I think they just want to continue to put up good points. I could be wrong here, someone that could go cornerback. Interestingly enough, the pick before that, I have Kool-Aid McKinstry, the cornerback, going to the Bills. Honestly, you could swap those two. I think that they're looking at cornerback and wide receiver, both those teams. Then after that, Cardinals, they're looking to help out Kyler Murray, get some more offense generated. They're going to go Brian Thomas Jr. or some other wide receiver is my guess. And then Bucks, I think they want to shore up their defense a little bit, and they're going to go with a top safety.
So do you think that the Cardinals go Brian Thomas Jr. on top of probably going for Marvin Harrison Jr. earlier in the same round?
Possibly.
Interesting.
That's
Not
very
as interesting as Tyler having the team with the MVP quarterback drafting using their first round pick on a quarterback.
The thing is, we're making fun of him here, but they're not even the last team to really kind of do that, right? When did Jordan Love get drafted by the Green Bay?
But the year before, did Green Bay Packers make it to the conference championship game?
I'm trying to remember
Probably.
if he won an MVP the year before, if it was the year after. It was probably the year. I think it was the year after, actually. I think it was the year after they drafted Jordan Love. He won 2 MVPs.
Dude,
Interesting.
Rodgers would have made it to the Super Bowl if they didn't draft Jordan Love.
Huh, man. Maybe I
They had
am right.
drafted the top wide receiver.
I'm not saying you're
Instead of
right.
him.
I think you're wrong. Totally wrong.
You just wait and see.
No. Oh, God.
Protect the quarterback.
Well,
You're crazy.
that was our first 32 through picks 26 of the 2024 free rookie draft. Whoops,
Can we
almost
just
said free
scrap
agents.
this whole pod?
Yeah, we'll just whoops.
Well,
Scrap the
this
pod
is
or
us
the
basically saying,
episode.
hey, this is a practice pod, and
It was a
thank you for
practice
listening,
episode.
everybody.
All right, well, that is
This
the
is what not to do.
14th. This is how to not start a podcast. This was episode 14. We will try our best to be back
Don't
next
say.
week.
Yeah, we need to be
I
a little
hope.
bit more disciplined. Unfortunately, because no one is subscribing to us and paying us yet, we have to actually have day jobs, everybody. So, how
God
about you
darn
guys,
it.
You guys want better content? Give us some money, huh?
Yeah, so that being said, that happens if you give us a like on YouTube, subscribe to us on Spotify, or subscribe both. I don't really know how Spotify. I guess Spotify you subscribe.
You can
But
I'm
like us
subscribed.
and subscribe us on both YouTube and Spotify. How's that?
Hey,
but
Tyler, your candle's on fire over there.
What? Oh no, it's supposed to be. You little. You know what? And that
was
being
well done.
said,
I
on
like
that bombshell,
I really
it's time to
enjoyed
end.
that.
Have a great night, everyone. We will be back shortly. Take care. Thank you, Mike.
Are we done?
Yeah, that's it. Finally, it ended.
It's still
Thank the
recording.
Lord.
We're
We
about
made
to
it.
restart this.